Listen to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. Great deal going on. You throw down $1 on an NBA game, and if that team wins, you get $150 in free plays. That simple, that easy. With John Schuster, I'm merely Mike Luke, the new and shaved Mike Luke, the one who can now actually feel his face in public. That doesn't sound right. We also have a very special guest, William Brad Allis. Hello there, William.
Hey, fellas, what's going on?
Not too much. We got a lot to get to out there. We already got, looks like we already got about 10 comments in here. Guys, we're going to get to you. But first and foremost, I want to get to the two experts, the two guys that I've grown up listening to. That's more of a comment on your guys' age than my expertise. So let's talk about it a little bit here. First and foremost, and Sarah Beth Grier, gotcha for there. Pretty sure I'm right on that one. Thank you for hopping on here as well. All right. Shu, Brad, hop on it. We're going to go with Brad first. Brad, we haven't had you on here in a little while. Tell me a little bit about this team and just what impresses you so much, especially in this blowout we saw tonight.
I think that's just it. This team doesn't have letdowns. You were kind of joking on the Twitter early in the game. You're like, maybe Jason has it right with a close game. And that bad streak lasted about 8 minutes or whatever it was. What are they on, a 9-game win streak? And they've had 2 single-digit wins, and one of those was by 9 to USC. And the other one was a close, hard-fought win over a pretty good Oregon team. They just blow people out. So when they have a bad half, that's all it is. And it's usually not even half. It's usually a quarter of a game. They just go out, they beat people, and they go on those runs. And we saw it today. They open up 8-0. Suddenly they're down. Next thing you know, they're up double figures, and they're coasting. They even turn the ball over, and they're still up 24 early in the second.
Remember, I want to get back to the 87-88 point that Shu's been making for a little while here, and I want to get your take on that as well. But Schuster, again, this was a game, too, that just like Brad said, I was tweeting out and I was saying to Jason Shearer was saying to me before the game, he'd like Utah with the 11.5. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, rowdy atmosphere. Utah crowd is going. Everything looks good for them. And, oh, yeah, by the way, it goes from being Arizona down 1 to Arizona up 14. This seems like a repeat. Like we could do the same exact post-game show every single time. We wouldn't because we have all kinds of incredible viewers right here where you get to all your comments, but it feels like this is something we're talking about game in and game out, Shu.
And it is something we're talking about game in and game out. But one of the things that impressed me tonight was that Tommy Lloyd made big points in the locker room this evening. Not that he necessarily had to do it, but he did. Someone on that bench let him know that Kriisa was 1 rebound away from a triple-double. They didn't need to put him back into the game, but the awareness of having an opportunity to try to make something like that happen goes a long way toward garnering even additional chemistry. And I think that is something that's a short-term gain with long-term investment possibilities as well. So in terms
what do you mean by that? Expand on that a little bit, Shu.
In terms of getting individual accolades, that was a nice thing to say, but it's one of those things I think where if you're a player recruiting the program and recruiting other people who might want to come to the program, whether it's from a high school level, overseas, or via the transfer portal, getting the word that there's a legitimate players coach out there who's got your back and when special and allows you to play, I think goes a long way toward maybe if you're on the fence trying to determine what team you're ultimately looking at going for. I don't think Tommy Lloyd hurt himself tonight by doing something that was very simple in a game that on the schedule meant basically absolutely nothing. Could have been a trap game. Colorado coming up on the weekend has to win, so they're going to bring Arizona's best shot. The Cats just got through a difficult Oregon game where they were completely drained. Could have turned in a flat performance tonight. And in the midst of all of that, when a lot of stuff didn't matter, a polarizing point guard from Estonia became the answer to a new trivia question about getting the first Wildcat to get a triple-double since Andre Iguodala did it in 2004. Now, if you had that one on the DraftKings Sports app, that would have been pretty darn impressive. But those are not occurrences that take place on a regular basis, but Lloyd and his coaching staff was aware of it when it ultimately, when the opportunity was there, and he was able to take advantage of it. And even though I guess you could question, the legitimacy of that final rebound, if it holds, then you've got a guy who got a triple-double, and that's pretty cool at the college level.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think is really that simple. Now, let's get to some of these questions right here. A lot of people are saying, who's the guy in the left-hand corner? That would be Mike Luke. All right. A lot of you haven't seen me since we've gone live. I shaved the beard for the first time in about 2 years. And, by the way, I feel very good that I did it. I'm a little chapped across the face. I didn't realize that it would be that difficult. But you know what? This is generally what I look at. And you know what? I go back to looking 12 right now. So, Mom, if you're listening right now, if you're watching right now, you're probably happy.
Additionally than that, Mike, you also finally look like the damn DraftKings animated emoji thumbnail thingy that they've been
there was a guy in the media.
It's about darn time.
There was a guy in the media that made a pretty funny point. He said, now that you've shaved your face, you now should have the beard on your emoji, which I think would actually be
I did it in Photoshop for you, Mike, when you originally got the gig. And
that's what we can do. And you know what? We can go back to that. But let's stay on the game here for a second. Kerr Kriisa. Tommy Lloyd has been talking about him all day, or not all day, but game in, game out. He's been saying, and Robbie, to answer your question, yes, but it feels like it's breathing now. Tommy Lloyd's been saying, you know what? I don't care what his percentages are. He's going to start making shots. And you know what? If people want to play off of him, they're a lot ballsier. He didn't say ballsier than I am, but that was basically his MO. When you watch Kriisa shoot the ball, and I think this is what we're talking about pretty much game in and game out, fellas, it looks good. Even the shots that don't go in, and there's been a lot of crazy shots, Brad, when the ball leaves his hand, it looks good. The forms appear, and I think hopefully this was his coming out party.
Yeah, I think his coming out party was if it wasn't blowing kisses to whatever fan base it was probably nailing the big 3-point shot late against Oregon. I think that was the coming out party. Today might just be kind of the culmination where he kind of put it all together. What was he? 6 of 7 in the first half, including that near half-court shot.
Right.
When you throw in the triple-double, or we'll find out if it's going to be an official triple-double, when you throw in the fact that he just played a nice game. People have already been talking about him because he's kind of this team's Danny Ainge. But if he can become this team's, for lack of a better word, Steve Kerr, then that can go a long way and further propelling a team that's already pretty spectacular to even new heights. As I was kind of joking with someone, it sure seems like he's either going to hit the game winner in the national championship game, or he's going to make the bonehead play that's going to cost him a tournament game. And, you never know with him. That's what makes him interesting and maddening and a lot of fun if you're an Arizona fan. And I can understand why the rest of the Pac-12 kind of can't stand the guy.
What is your thought? And we've talked a lot about it, and I've probably been a little harder on him than I probably should have. But what are your thoughts on Kriisa, just watching him and watching what you saw today?
I think Kriisa actually likes playing at the college level. I think he likes being at the U of A. I think he embraces the opportunity that he has. He's having fun. He's bold. He's brash. And if he's Danny Ainge for Arizona, that's fine by me. He doesn't have to be Steve Kerr. He can be Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge.
Well, that'll be all right.
Constantly competed and just figured out ways to win. Fine by me. Tonight, thought it was a very interesting game, too. If you're like Brad Allis or Mike Luke, certainly never like John Schuster in pickup games. All you're doing after you get hot from three-point range, and let's make no mistake, if you're Brad Allis and Mike Luke, you're hot from three-point range all the time.
All the time. You come in hot.
What happens when you come in hot is that you just keep jacking. Hey, I just made 6 in a row, so what if the other 62 didn't go in, that next one's going in, and damn it, I'm taking it because I hit 6 in a row at one point. Kriisa in the second half took, 1 3-pointer?
Right.
And then, so somewhere along the line, instead of just jacking up in a game where he could have, because Arizona was in control, he then decided to try to distribute. and was very effective in that regard as well. I don't think he necessarily went into this game thinking, you know what I'm going to do in the second half? I'm going to try to compile a bunch of assists and see what I can do with my powerhouse rebounding numbers to work on that legendary elusive Wildcat triple-double. But I think he was not only was he in rhythm tonight, but in the second half, he was smart tonight too. And he's that type of personality that you would figure, all right, he just drained 7 in a row. He's going to shoot another 15 because he thinks he's hot, and he's no, he was smart this evening, and it didn't hurt Arizona obviously at all. And that's an aspect that I like to see. Offensively, he's shooting them in rhythm. If they give it to him, it works. Utah tried a strategy. They're a woefully undermanned team with size and talent issues at this stage, even though I really like their coach. And I think that's a program that's moving in a good direction. But right now they just don't have the personnel, and their scouting report was try to force it on the inside and hope Arizona misses. And Kriisa didn't miss. And I think occasionally it's a strategy Arizona's going to see from here on out, but it helps when Kriisa gets open looks, shoots them in rhythm, and makes them.
Brad, what do you think about Ricky Garrett's point right here? Because I agree with him here where he says Kriisa's matured since UCLA. For me, and we talked about this a little bit in the post game last game, to me, he just looks more steady out there. He doesn't look quite as erratic. He looks more fluid. Even if he's not making the shot, he gives me, at least from my sofa seat, he gives me a little bit more confidence than at least I had earlier in the season. You see that or no?
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that's maturing and how much of that is just, remember, he missed most of last season. He had a long time without playing in competitive basketball games. Then he has to translate to a new offense, a new position, and how much of it is just him getting a good feel for things. And maybe that is maturing. I don't know.
Right.
But certainly, I think the other thing that's good about this team, with maybe the exception of Mathurin, no one really has to get theirs. And I think Kriisa was probably like, yeah, I had my half. Let's get everyone else involved even more and take what comes to them. And maybe that's maturity. But what, every starter in double figures? I mean, I'm not sure what the final numbers were. It sure looks like the starting lineup shot about 60%, and the bench players shot about 30. But Kriisa, yeah, I think this is a team that is generally happy getting everyone involved, and kind of I think maybe there's some perverse pleasure for this team looking at that stat sheet and seeing a bunch of double-digit numbers as opposed to a couple twos. And then a bunch of single-digit numbers.
Brad, there's a lot of people have asked the question about 87, 88, and I want to get to that in just a second. Schuster's brought that up as well. One thing, though, that we got to tell you all about right now is the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Code word PHNX. Here's the deal. Throw down $1 on an NBA game, and if that team wins, you get $150 in free plays. Very simple, very easy. By the way, everybody's asking where Mike Luke went. We don't know where Mike Luke went. We're looking for him, though. All right. John Schuster says it's not who you bet for in the DraftKings Sportsbook. It's who you bet against. Bet against the Detroit Pistons.
Don't because that didn't go so well tonight.
I was going to say.
But somebody also did bet on the Wildcats, so that part was okay.
It's that simple, that easy. Eligibility restrictions apply. 21 and up, Arizona only. You got a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT STEP. They'll get you all taken care of. All right, William. Brad has been, or not Brad, Shu's been talking about this, and I love this idea. He's been talking about this team in the 87-88 type mold. And you know what, Shu? I don't want to speak for you here because it's your thought. You lived it. You guys lived it. Tell Brad you two go back and forth a little bit here.
Sure. Hey, Brad, how are you?
Simple.
Nice to see you. Wow, it's really good. The gist of it is, Brad, and you can look at this from a position-to-position standpoint if you want, but I tend to look this on a more grander scheme. You have the general similarities here are time frame. You have two programs at different points in time that kind of were working through dark ages for different reasons. Obviously, the tail end of the Fred Snowden period, the 1 year with Ben Lindsay, and then Olsen took about 3 years for Arizona to get on track. And by year 4, the 88 team exploded onto the scene, and it was the beginning of what we have come to enjoy as now coming up on 35 years of really good basketball, and a program that is a brand on the national stage with a chance to be consistently a top 10 program. That all started in 1988 after a dark ages period for the program. Miller, because of the sanctions, goes through a bit of a dark ages period at Arizona as well. Lloyd propels himself onto the scene in the first year, and even though it's Miller's players, Arizona looks like they are the train at the end of the tunnel, not the light at the end of the tunnel, and they're rolling over everybody just like 88 did. In 88, the Cats won, I think, 22 games by 19 points or more. It was some obnoxious number like that. And this team is playing at a very similar level. When they go up against inferior competition, they dominate, and they've been able to beat good teams as well with a style that was very similar to what we saw in that period of time. So to me, the two campaigns feel a little bit like a renaissance for Arizona basketball. And if we're onto a second renaissance here, that's good news for Wildcat fans and hopefully the program.
One thing that's real, and Brad, then I'll cede the court or the field, however you want to look at it, is when you and Schuster and I have been talking about this. When you play games like that and you destroy people, it really helps you come NCAA tournament time, because again, you play less games. And I think back to that 87-88 team when they played North Carolina in the Elite Eight. That was a blowout, if I'm not mistaken. And that's the kind of stuff you're looking for, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember the amount of, and again, I was a freshman in high school for that team. But if you think about it, yeah, they had the weird loss to Stanford, which I think was the lone Pac-12 loss. I think they had they have one other regular season loss at New Mexico, I think it was.
Right.
And that, again, that's when the pit was the pit. And then they didn't struggle again until they faced Oklahoma. I mean, they rolled through the NCAA tournament. I think they beat Cornell by about 147. They really didn't. Yeah, they destroyed Carolina. I mean, it was close for a half, and then all of a sudden, Tolbert hits the two acrobatic shots. I think when you talk style and you talk what they're doing, yeah, there's some similarities. That was a very experienced team. This is a fairly young team. This is a much bigger team. Remember, on that one, Cook was maybe 6'9". Tolbert was really 6'7". Elliott was long, which is very similar to this team on the wing. You look at the backcourt was pretty big for Arizona. Then really they played two combo guards. Kerr was the point guard, but he was shooting so much. So I think there are a lot of similarities. It also reminds me of that Derek Williams team when they were going good. Remember, there was a stretch, and Shu may remember this, where Arizona, found a rhythm. I think it was in mid-December. They were just blowing teams away, and I put the 37 cents down on the table and said I'm buying in. We had that moment early in the season too. So I think there are some similarities. College basketball is just so different. I think you can argue that while Arizona experience-wise, I think they have one guy who's played in a tournament game.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they're also a bunch of guys who've been in college basketball for 2 or 3 years. So they are kind of veteran, and at the same time, they're older but inexperienced, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I think it's interesting. But if you look at all the Arizona teams that have made those runs, style-wise, yeah, I think maybe the only other team you could think of is that 03 team, which was pretty long and athletic and made some things happen on the defensive side of the ball, especially when they brought Hassan and Andre off the bench. But even that was a very different team. So, yeah, it's hard to compare to 88 because that's such a special team. What they end up having 7 NBA players and a Major League Baseball player on that team. But when you look at that, yeah, margin of victory, when you look at offense to defense, when you look at the way they pass the ball and find the open man, there are definitely some similarities.
Yeah, and I like the stylistic comparison because, Brad, I think you hit the nail on the head. Obviously, AC or Anthony Cook, since we're going to be specific here for John Schuster, is not as tall as Koloko. Similar type style. Tubelis and Tolbert, similar. Obviously, Ben Mathurin is your Elliott. Obviously, he doesn't compare to Elliott, but, still he's the best player on the team. He's the best player on the conference. Kerr is Kerr, still not as good. But I do like some of the comparisons. I said this probably about, probably about a month ago. And I stand by it, and I stand resolute. I think this is the best team Arizona's had since 2002, 2003. The team that you just brought up right there. The Ricky Anderson, Luke Walton, Salim Stoudemire, Channing Frye. This team to me is better than the Miller teams. They might not be quite as talented, but this team just this team doesn't play close games. When you look back and say the 13-14 team, or I can't remember, 14-15, the Aaron Gordon team, that team still played weird close games, and they had a few losses to bad teams. ASU, I think Oregon State, I wanted to say they ended up losing to. And Brad Malone's on here. We're going to get to Brad here in just a second. Brad's a good dude.
Ran into Brad at a restaurant just a few days ago. So
right there,
one reason I'm making my return. Gotta keep Brad happy.
Game recognized game right there. But this team to me is different because this team, if you don't step onto the court, Brad, with either size or a talent level, you're going to get run. This team just annihilates teams that aren't as talented as them. And that to me is different than, say, maybe 13-14.
What's crazy about this team is when you consider he inherited a team, patches it together with mostly transfers. I mean, yeah, they've got a couple nice recruits, but those guys are on the bench. They don't play.
Right.
In Ball and Norrell. It's really well constructed.
Right.
You've got really 5 guys that can score in different ways. You've got the glue guy in Dalen Terry. You've got, the size where you need it. You've got a shot blocker. You've got a space eater coming off the bench. You've got a guy in Kerr who's kind of versatile, who's also very physically mature, so he can really D up on some of the more physical guards and wings. You kind of got a do-it-all guy in Larson. If there was a knock on those 2 Elite 8 teams of Miller, the back-to-back, is you had Aaron Gordon the 1 year sort of playing out of position because he wanted to be until Ashley got hurt. Right. And then the team wasn't as good. And you never quite had the consistent scoring.
That to me is the problem. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
You didn't have, in fact, in this team, you say who takes the last shot. I got 3 guys. I think maybe 4. I don't know. Terry maybe is a stretch, but you tell me Tubelis is taking the. We've seen him do it. You tell me Kerr is going to hit the shot. Yeah, okay. Put the ball in Mathurin's hands. Sure. On that team, were you really, Nick Johnson? Were you really trusting as much as we all love TJ McConnell? Is he the guy you really want the ball in his? And we saw it. Nick Johnson didn't know the clock in the one game, and then also got the push off. So I think this team's just really well constructed, and maybe that's just a credit to not only Tommy Lloyd but the coaching staff as a whole, that they're able to keep the talent they wanted here. I mean, would they want a James Akinjo? Probably. Would Jordan, Brown be nice off the bench? I don't know if they really wanted him. But then when you figure out who you have from last year's team, then you can go pluck a few guys. They were always going to bring Ballo in because that was Lloyd's guy. But, to get a Pella Larson, who has taken a little while to round into form, but nice player. Kerr is a guy who could start for a lot of teams. That's just, it's a well-constructed team. And again, you don't have to just have one guy go off. If Mathurin scores 6 points in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, this team could still win a game by 12 points.
Well, think about the UCLA game when Arizona beat UCLA here in McHale. Mathurin was still kind of in the middle of that, in the midst of that struggle there, Shu, and it didn't really matter because you've got so many different guys that can take that next step. One guy though that I think you got to really look at, and I think has become, I don't want to say your most consistent player, but he's right there game in and game out, has been Dalen Terry. Every single game now, I basically know that I'm going to probably get about 12 points. And that's the departure from earlier in the season, where a lot of times it would be maybe 5 points, but good defense, good assisting, great defense, a real feel for the game. He's really started to really emerge into that role. And this guy is probably going to make a lot of money sooner than later.
And he looks like somebody who's even gaining a little bit more confidence on the offensive end, which is nice to see too. One of the scouting reports, and Utah, I thought, did kind of an interesting series of things. I thought their scouting efforts were good for a team that was just overwhelmed. And a couple of things that they did, they played off Tubelis on the outside, and they played off Terry from the outside, thinking, all right, you can't let Terry beat you to the rack, because even if he doesn't make the layup, he might be long enough to keep the basketball alive and perhaps lead toward an offensive rebound and a second shot opportunity. So play off him. He also sees the court very well. So there's a lot of defenses that are sort of approaching Dalen Terry like early Luke Walton. Play off him a little bit, make him beat you from the outside. But it looks like in the last 2 or 3 games that Lloyd doesn't have a problem with Terry taking the shot, and Terry has developed a certain confidence about it.
You know what's weird about his shot?
It's inconsistent, but I think it's improved from a percentage standpoint, and now you don't think that when the shot's going up that there's absolutely no chance. I think you feel a little bit better about the opportunity of Arizona getting a 3. And if Terry adds that to his game, it becomes real difficult to stop him.
I was texting during the game with our guy, Matty M., and I asked Matt Muehlbach, to the people that don't know how close we all are here. And Muehlbach and I have been going back and forth right there. Kansas City, baby. I see that. If you know, as the kids say. But and I said, what's the difference between Andre Iguodala and Dalen Terry at the same stage? And he said, well, I think that Andre Iguodala is more explosive athletically. And I think that's fair. But he did like the comparison right there. What's weird to me about Terry is his form still stinks. I get that. But he's got a soft touch. Like when he's shooting his threes now, the ball kind of rotates around the rim. It's not, and we've seen bad shooters at the U of A. Like when Hassan Adams was shooting a 3, especially that senior year, I mean, no thanks. You knew that it had no chance of going in. With Dalen Terry, it still feels when it hits the rim, Brad, there's a chance it's going to go in.
Yeah, Dalen Terry to me is freshman year Andre Iguodala. Right now, so I hope he comes back for one more. I don't know if he will, because frankly, remember the NBA. I keep saying, well, Peter, you only average. NBA doesn't care what you average. NBA drafts on potential. There's a reason, Josh Green went higher than the other guys off of the team 2 years ago. But I'll tell you the real big thing about Terry is it's just he's Andre Iguodala with a better attitude. Remember, Andre drove a wedge in this team. People love Andre. Those people weren't here or don't remember. He was maddening because he was a guy who freshman year showed glimpses, senior year checked out. And there's some stuff behind the scenes. He wasn't a good teammate for certain guys, at least on the team. And you can look at who left the team in February. And he and Andre were really close friends. And by the end of that season, they didn't like each other because Andre had checked out. And again, part of me can't blame him. That was a 9 seed. They weren't going to win a national title. They were probably talented enough to go the second weekend. But when you combine that with my favorite player of all time, Salim Stoudemire was crazy that season. I mean, Lute almost kicked him off the team a few times. But Andre wasn't a good guy. Wasn't a good teammate. Dalen Terry's a great teammate, I think. I mean, I hear nothing else because he does the same things Andre does, but isn't worried about the same thing I think Andre was. In many ways, the other guy, he kind of athletically reminds me of. He's probably a better athlete, but he's everything I hope Jamel Horn was going to be, but he never could be because he was bonkers himself. He just does a little bit of everything. And I think a good comparison is from the stat sheet, Walton, although he's a completely different player than Walton because he's so much more athletic. I mean, he's going to play in the NBA because he's a freak athlete. He's 6'7". He can defend 3 positions. He can shoot well enough. And he's a guy, I think, when he gets to the NBA and he can shoot 200 jumpers extra a day that you can't in college because you're going to class, is going to develop. But there is definitely an Andre comparison on the court. I think it's the off the court stuff that maybe Dalen Terry is better than Andre.
And
What do you got, Shu?
and hopefully Iguodala was able to grow up once he got to the NBA, because he's had, obviously had a heck of a career and continues to have a heck of a career and made a heck of a lot of money in the process. I'm a believer that there are a number of players on this team who are going to make a lot of money professionally, and Terry's going to make more than all of them in the NBA. I think he's going to be, and the attitude helps. Barring injury, barring something that's out of folks' control, Terry's going to be in the league for a heck of a long time.
What do you like about Shu? Let me ask you this. What do you like more about him projecting to the next level? What do you like more about him than, say, Ben Mathurin?
I think he's I like the length. I like his court vision. I think his athleticism matches with Mathurin, and Mathurin's explosive.
Right.
And if he can develop a shot that's generally okay, I think, as Brad noted, he can also play 3 positions on the floor defensively, and that plays at the next level. As much as sometimes it feels like an all-star game, guys who can do that and get you into the open floor are nice to have. And his ability to see the floor the way that he does, and general unselfishness across the board. You guys noted it and continue to note it. I think one of the things that became interesting is that Terry's advancement has a lot to do with Terry not expecting maybe to be this good. So there was,
I see some of that for sure.
By the relatively early portion of Iguodala's career, you could tell from an overall athleticism standpoint that Iguodala had his eyes on the next level almost the second that he got to the U of A campus. Terry, on the other hand, almost seems happy to be here and still trying to learn and figure it out. And then somewhere along the line, about 6 weeks ago, it's like, whoa, this guy's got skills. And this guy can really develop. And now we're not talking about a guy who may be here next year. There's a possibility he could actually be in the league next year. And I think I'm not sure that hasn't surprised Terry, perhaps as it's surprised everybody else. And so, hey, the unselfishness thing has worked to this point. Why not keep doing it? It's been good news for Arizona up to this stage. It might as well continue to be.
Here's what we're about here on the AZ Wildcats podcast. We're about making you money. That's called being unselfish. Here's how you make money. You hop on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. Throw down $1 in an NBA game, get $150 in free plays if that team wins. Now, Sean Schuster has been saying for a couple weeks now, bet against the Pistons. This has been sound advice until today.
Until the last couple games, yes.
Yes.
Including today, yes.
It's been sound advice. Otherwise, it's whatever. I'm going to mangle that. DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. As Chico Marietta said, money, money, money. That's what we're about making here. All right. Now, before we let everybody go, let's move around the conference here a little bit here. Now, Brad, I wanted to get your take on the maddening team that is the Oregon Ducks. To absolutely nobody's surprise, they beat UCLA tonight, and I'm sure they'll probably beat UCLA or USC Saturday, and then they will probably lose to Washington the following week. We've watched a lot of hoop this season. The only team that I really thought, and that's not really fair, USC is in that mix as well, but Oregon's the only team that I've seen that really looked like they had the players, the athleticism, the length, the quickness to go toe-to-toe with Arizona. And I think that's why that's such a weird team, but it also goes to show you, too, the difference between Oregon and that they found ways to lose that game in McHale at the end. Arizona found ways to win that game, and I think that's obviously the difference that's going on right now.
I think there's 2 things that perplex me about Oregon. One is their effort level. They don't show up for games, which is weird for Oregon and Dana Altman.
Right.
And 2, their basketball IQ I don't think is very good.
It's very low.
And just look at the final play against Arizona. They needed a 3. He tried to head fake Koloko, and then he drove into the teeth, and he wasn't looking to dish. He tried to shoot with 1 second left in a 3-point game. He got blocked, but before that, he trapped. I mean, either he had no clue or he just got caught. And maybe it's a combination, but, I mean, how many times have we seen Oregon make that big play in the final minute against Arizona?
Yeah.
Seems like every time. Just go down the list of Oregon guards making big plays, and they couldn't. And it's weird seeing this from a Dana Altman team. If you had told me this was they look like a Steve Alford team is what they look like.
Right.
Except they're maybe better constructed, but yeah, I can't figure it out.
We do expect them to beat USC on Saturday, right?
I don't know. This is for really, this USC team generally kind of sort of takes care of business more.
They
often
won in
than
double
not.
overtime, by the way.
I saw
tonight.
that, yeah.
Right.
Which I know helps Arizona in some regards. It also meant that Arizona doesn't get to share, at least share the title tonight. But yeah, so that to me is a toss-up game. Oregon needs it more because I think they can still play their way into the tournament and getting that win. I think
Lunardi says if they win, they're basically in if they beat USC. So.
I think that's fair. I think they probably still have to grab at least one in Vegas. But no, so I have no idea with this team, but which is weird to say because usually the one guy you can count on to put that consistent product, whatever that level is your Crete boy. Dana Altman. I mean, if they're going to be an 18-10 team, they're going to play 18-10 basketball all year. They're not going to be as up and down as this team has been, which, yeah, again, to me is the weird part about it. That and when you throw in kind of that lack of basketball IQ, I think what really happened is I think it took a decade, but the transfer game finally got to him, and he didn't get all the pieces right for once, or couldn't make them all gel for once.
Which is sort of ironic to some degree in that he's the master of what college basketball, I think, is going to be. And so being ahead of the transfer portal, this is, I think, what you can expect for a lot of teams, and even great coaches like Dana Altman struggle sometimes. Oregon looks to me like a rocket ship mired in a tar pit. You just know that... You just know that they're going to launch their way to the stratosphere, and then they get stuck in the muck, and it's just back to ground level. They're also not good in pressure situations, and I think that's something that you talked about. If you watch teams late in game pressure them, they don't handle it very well.
And you would think they do because they got a lot of guards.
They have a lot of guards and a lot of ball handlers.
But they don't have that guy this year.
Yeah,
they don't have Peyton Pritchard. Point. They don't have Dylan Brooke. They don't have
Chris Duarte or
that guy.
Well, and those are great points. And it feels that way. They've got some guys who can score. They've got some guys who at position should be the next up to make that happen. And it just hasn't happened. They can't get open on inbounds plays. They turn the ball over when they're pressed. UCLA tonight. And let's not get too revisionist history here. It took us about a month to recognize how good Arizona potentially was going to be. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of the year, from a conference standpoint, we thought UCLA was going to win the Pac-12. And UCLA is still really good, and you still can't kill them. Even tonight, they were without Juzang for most of the game, who sprained his ankle, and we don't know how long-term that is. And then they lost Hawkes to foul trouble in the last 5 minutes, and still had opportunities to win the game when they had no business doing that. They're a tough, physical, gritty veteran team that stays around, and Oregon is a ridiculously athletic team that can't get out of its own way. And so who knows what that's going to be in the tournament. By the way, Lunardi is nuts. And thankfully, Bill Walton, who is equally
the
or
voice
more
of
nuts,
reason, Bill Walton,
called him out on it tonight. Oregon is an 11-win team in a Power 5 conference. If they were an 11-win team in any other Power 5 conference in some mid-majors, they'd be firmly in the field, even with 2 losses to ASU, even with a bad home loss to California. Why Lunardi struggles with Oregon, and by proxy struggles with this conference, is utterly baffling to me, but it's clear. It sounded like he thought Oregon still had to jump through hoops to get into the NCAA tournament. And that's just that to me. And I thought Dave Pasch said something really interesting in the ESPN broadcast tonight as well. He said, I was at the Michigan State game, and Michigan State's firmly in the tournament. And I've seen Oregon a bunch of times. Oregon's a better basketball team. And he's right. They're maddening. They're nuts. They're crazy. They frustrate Altman and everybody else. But how Oregon is not in this field and not considered in this field and is somehow a bubble team is an absolute travesty, just based on if you want the best teams to have an opportunity to play in this thing.
All right, everyone. Before we sign off, I want to give you a little bit of an update on Bruno. All right. As you know, I was up in Fort Collins, Colorado. Very nice people up there, by the way. They were very kind to me. Bruno had his 5 days of radiation. He's doing very well. He doesn't want to come over. He's currently snoring in the corner. I actually heard him just pass gas about 6 minutes ago, so he's feeling good. But Bruno's doing very well. Everybody out there, thank you for asking about it. Before we let you go, two things. William, appreciate you hopping on. You always have an open invite, so you should hop on more. And the microphone is sexy.
Okay, well, yeah, I used some of the old man birthday money from the mother-in-law to get the new mic because I know your fans were clamoring.
They want you on. They want more, Brad. Not
and
less,
honestly,
Brad.
the reason I've been on, I haven't watched an Arizona basketball game live in about 3 weeks. For those of you who don't know, between having twins and coaching every youth sporting team, I haven't seen a game, especially on a Saturday.
You're playing hockey.
And I'm playing hockey. So when you throw those all in together, a lot of those games start during practice. Hey, I am 6-1-1 as a first-time volleyball coach.
You're
Dave
6'1"?
Rubio, 6-1-1.
Oh.
So Dave Rubio, watch out. But yeah, this is the first game I've seen live in about 3 weeks. And so I thought between new mic and actually getting to be on when you're on.
Yeah, I like it.
Now you just have to excuse the fact that I'm hiding in my laundry room.
Brad, nobody cares. Nobody cares about any of that.
I tried to hang up my Chiefs flag for you all, but
I was in a La Quinta for the longest time. Nobody cares. By the way,
quality.
The La Quintas,
they're not a sponsor, are they?
What's that?
They're not a sponsor, though?
No, they're not. But the La Quinta in Albuquerque was less than impressive. The one in
Albuquerque's less than impressive.
Albuquerque is really, and I'm sorry if anybody out there is from Albuquerque, it's a poor man's Tucson, but a very poor man's Tucson.
Have you heard the story? Shu and I went to an NCAA tournament there. I think you were there, Shu. Maybe you weren't. But the whole old Cat Tracks crew went. And we asked where the closest sports bar was. And they said, we don't have any. I'm like, what? They said, well, there's one on campus, but it's a dance club at night. There's an Applebee's down the road. So we went to Applebee's. And said, do you have the games on? They're like, no, we don't get that channel. This was
like ESPN or something.
This was like 0203 era. No, it was CBS. We ended up getting like this pizza the size of a dining room table, which was pretty good, and watching it in the hotel room. But yeah, that's my impersonation of Albuquerque. I spent a summer there when my dad was working there, but yeah, less than impressed. Maybe it's very nice now, but yeah, I wasn't impressed then when I couldn't find a place that had CBS to watch basketball games during the NCAA tournament.
All right, before we sign off, Robbie makes a very great point here. Brad, we only care that you're there. We don't care. Laundry room, schmondry room.
These are the Brad Allis studio with when I'm not in my closet.
Okay. All right. Quick
I don't
question
have the coolest
here,
corner like Shu.
Before the NCAA tournament, does Arizona lose another game? Yay or nay?
Yes. At USC.
At USC? What do you say, William?
And possibly in the Pac-12 tourney as well.
Okay, what do you say, William? Are you going with Shu and you think that they lose out essentially?
No, I think they might. I could see them dropping one in the Pac-12 tournament, and I could see them not being upset about not playing 3-3. A week after playing 3-5, 2 weeks removed from playing 3-5, 3 weeks removed from, I could see them not, and I know it would suck for those of you making the trip, but I could see them losing to the semifinals and not really caring that they're not playing.
And it also won't matter because I think they'll be a number one in the South.
Here's what I'm doing here, guys. I'm gonna be the voice of reason. I'm gonna back the A to the fullest, and I'm gonna say that they win out. I think Arizona's looking at 2 losses going into the NCAA tournament. I said it. Boom.
You did.
All right.
They're still going to be a number 1 seed in the South.
Correct. I actually see Colorado maybe being the weirder game. It is.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the elevation. You've got weird things happening in Boulder. You've is it a trap game because you do have USC 2 games away? I think honestly, if they beat Colorado, I think they probably just steamroll into LA and USC, especially now that USC kind of got the win tonight. They may have felt they needed, but We'll see. But yeah, I think if I'm picking a loss, I'm going to pick some weird semifinal loss in Vegas at like 9:30 at night, and Tommy Lloyd doesn't care because again, extra day of rest and prep.
By the way, real quick, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone here before we sign off. That's my DraftKings pick of the week. Arizona doesn't lose the rest of the season. All right, for John Schuster, William Brad Allis. William, we love having you on. You need to come on. Open invite. Shu, as always, you've been a beacon of light in an uncertain time for me.
Well, that's because there's a lot of light bouncing off my head. I apologize for that.
Well, but you know what? Either way, the beacon sounds strong. For Brad Allis, John Schuster, I'm Mike Luke. Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate you. We'll be back with you. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.